stand up for a minute, please. Stand up, stand up. Okay, I'm going to do a little civics lesson here before the big civics lesson. Some of you know this, you're seniors. This is the 6 principles of the American government, okay? So if you know it, do it with me. The first one is popular sovereignty. The next one is limited government. The next one is separation of powers. The next one is imbalances. And the most important one of those is and finally, federalism. Okay, so that's that. Everyone can sit down now for something a little bit more serious. So this is the end of the night light subject here, but I have a slightly different way of framing it, an alternate title to this, and just think through this with me. Did you ever wonder why Africans didn't enslave and colonize Europeans versus the other way around? You ever wonder about that? That's what I'm talking about tonight. And the sources are, I've been teaching AP World History for a long time. I read this book 22 years ago, and I've reread it 5 times. Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, Pulitzer Prize winning book. Spent a lot of time overseas. And raise your hand if you've seen the Black Panther film. I can't see it, so say, Wakanda rules. One more time, Wakanda rules. Okay, so that will make this make more sense if you've seen that. This is the heart of that film. It's a contra-history. In this movie, Black Panther, they come up with vibranium, this resource that makes Wakanda, the state in Africa, the most powerful in the world. That was its secret sauce. That was its killer app. So just hold that in your head as we go through this. So, race, background, we're humans. I think you've heard that a lot tonight from a lot of speakers. Humans are humans. In fact, we're one of the most homogeneous species out there. We've only been around for a couple 100,000 years. Again, people are people, and I know, anytime you're talking to somebody who doesn't seem to think that, just remind them we're all Africans. Every one of us. Great-great-grandma, great-great-grandpa, we all came out of there a couple 100,000 years ago at the most. And the racial differences between us, not only they're trivial, they're really recent. Most of them came just from the last ice age, which is only 10,000, 12,000 years ago or so. This thing about skin color, people have lots of melanin. It was there because it prevented skin cancer if you live near the equator. Others of us who don't have much, that was good. Not having much melanin when you lived close to the north helped you absorb light, get more vitamin D, prevent death-causing rickets. So it's just a modification for that. And yet, even though that is so trivial, these next 2 points I hope will stick with you. White Americans are 10 times wealthier than black Americans in the year 2018. 10 times. That's wealth. That's accumulated resources, not annual income. And wealth is what gives your family resilience to survive a medical emergency or a loss of jobs. Making this more global, fully half of sub-Saharan Africans live on less than $1.25 a day. The tip for a double half-cap decaf or whatever. So what gives? We're all humans. We're essentially the same. And we got numbers like that. What on earth is going on? And I hope you've thought about this and you've thought deeply about it. And you think about the causes. I'm not talking about the short-term, immediate causes, the ones that just come to mind to anybody off the top of their head, like, oh, the Africans had less technology. I really want you to peel the onion, at least a couple layers, get deeper. What's the ultimate long-term cause of this incredible disparity in wealth between the races in the United States today and around the world? So why did Africans have less tech is one way of saying that. And, we know it's not because of the people themselves. Me and a bunch of other people have said over and over, people are people. And there's a simple answer. I know a lot of you have heard it. It's so simple, it's almost hard to accept. It's this rotten, unlucky, bad, unfortunate geography. The geography. We have these kind of satellite photos now of the world that many of us didn't have when we were growing up, and you can learn a lot just from looking at something like this. Africa's geographic disadvantage, you can see it just looking at it. Almost 40% of it is either desert or drought prone savannas, a bunch of it's in the tropics where diseases are still killing hundreds of thousands of Africans, things like malaria, sleeping sickness, river blindness. And even that nice lush green area you see in the middle, this tropical rainforest is not very fertile. You get like 15 to 20 feet of water a year. It just rinses all the rich nutrients out of the soil. It's really not good farmland, for example. And historically, zero domesticatable animals on the entire continent. At least America's had the llama. There's nothing in Africa originally. No sheep, no goats, pigs, ox, donkeys, horses, etc. Not a one. And so they're historically missing all the key ingredients of long-term power, of long-term wealth. Protein, fertilizer, textiles, shelter, muscle power, and what goes with that, of course, is political power. I'm going to show some oversimplified visuals here, but why did Europe conquer Africa and enslave Africa? They had the tanks and the aircraft carriers of the day. When we lived in the agricultural revolution and beyond, this was the superpower. And this is analogous to the vibranium that the Wakandans had, the resource that only they had in this counterfactual movie called Black Panther. So again, I'm using these images to be simplified shorthands of that whole bundle of advantages or disadvantages. So Africa had some potential. They didn't have any horses or vibranium originally, but they did have zebras, lots of them, lots of zebras. And as a kid growing up, I'm sure you all thought, horsey, zebra, horse with stripes, ride the horse. But unfortunately, unlike horses, for a whole bunch of reasons about just the genetics of the zebra, you just can't tame them. People have been trying for thousands of years; they're untamable. And so, you can't hitch a wagon to them, you can't put a plow on them, and most importantly, you can't ride one into battle. So, just imagine, what if? So again, I'm oversimplifying this and just using this as a shorthand for resources. To slightly overstate the case, if zebras could be tamed, we'd all be speaking Zulu. You get that? The people that spoke Zulu, rode zebras, conquered the world, like the Indo-Europeans riding horses, conquered half of Eurasia, but they couldn't. So, enslavement and colonization were a consequence of not having those resources. And I'm sure you're asking, what's the big deal? That was so long ago, it's not relevant today, so why bring it up? And the reason is really simple. It's hard to catch up once you're behind. If you ever run track and you're behind a bunch of people, you got to pass on the outside, the elbows are out, you just can't get around them. Well begun is halfway done, your parents might have told you. And the advantages of those people from the lucky latitudes, the temperate climate, the places where they didn't have the drought, where they had the resources, where they had the horses, they accrue advantages that build up generation after generation after generation. Basically, an incredibly hard thing to pass. And those in power, fiercely resist losing it. Think about even after slavery was finally abolished, Jim Crow, the American apartheid, came in full bore. I'm old enough to remember absolute segregation. It's not that far off, but still we feel it today. In Africa, political colonialism has been replaced by economic colonialism. Now it's China kind of replacing the Europeans and Americans doing that, but it's hard to catch up. So you can't say, well, that's a long time ago. It's here, we're living with it. So again, ultimately, and I'm talking long-term, not the proximate reason, but the ultimate reason, why is there such a monstrous gap in the well-offness of Africans versus others? It's geography, not genetics. Say that with me. It's geography, not genetics. Thank you. So that's great news. It's geography, not genetics, means that that's malleable. It's hard to mess with genetics, but geography, the meaning of geography changes as technology changes, as our circle of sympathy expands to include, all of God's children. And it's in our hands, it's in our heads, and it's in our hearts. We can change this. And the real vibranium, the real resource today that all of us share, that all of us have, is our ability to respect each other. You know, the other becomes your brother, if you can do that, and I mean brothers and sisters. True equality of opportunity. Much easier said than done, and just to live up to our own creed of liberty and justice for all. Thank you.